Okay, item number 9 is Community Development Block Grant CARES Act funding. This will be presented by our Development Services Director, Mr. Ben Moody.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. And so the item before you is in regard to the how we're going to allocate the federal CARES Act fund that came to us via CDBG CV. And so with us tonight is our consultant, Paul Ashby, with Adams Ashby Group. And so he's going to walk through the background and the process that we did to determine a recommendation for the allocation. And so, Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ben. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I hope that you can hear me okay. Thumbs up from somebody. Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and then I'll work there with the clerk there when needed to move to the next slide. Give me one moment here while it brings it up. Okay, so again, my name is Paul Ashby, Adams Ashby Group. We're a consultant firm that's been working with the city of Yuba City since about February of 2021. Tonight we are going to be reviewing the CDBG CV money, which comes from the CARES Act. And we'll be holding a public hearing at the end of this, taking any public comments, and then asking for council direction. Next slide, please. So a little bit of history on the Community Development Block Grant Program. This was started back in 1974. CDBG's purposes is to provide decent housing, suitable living conditions, and economic opportunities. Primarily, we're always focusing on the low and moderate income groups. The federal government, HUD, Housing and Urban Development, defines that as 80% or below the county median income. And every year, those numbers change. Due to COVID-19, additional funds were awarded through the CARES Act, which we will be referring to as CDBG CV dollars. Due to the size of the city of Yuba City, you are what's known as an entitlement community, meaning that you receive your allocations directly from the federal government. Non-entitlement communities that are smaller compete for these funds every year through the state. But the city of Yuba City just receives their allocation annually. Next slide, please. So the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act was passed March 27th, 2020, as we're all probably familiar with. Within that was $5 billion in supplemental CDBG funding, which in turn got passed down through the states and then on to local municipalities, cities, counties, and non-entitlement jurisdictions. These funds are used to provide grants to prevent, prepare for, or respond to the coronavirus. Some of the eligible activities you'll see here are very similar to what you always see with your CDBG allocation. There's just a COVID-19 nexus to it. So we have your public services, your public facilities, economic development, and program administration. Next slide, please. So in order to learn what needed to be done in this community with these funds, staff in partnership with our firm did community outreach to try to solicit comments and input from outside organizations and internal departments within the city of Yuba City. So on March 2nd, 2021, we held a public meeting and invited a number of nonprofits in the area, as well as any city staff that would like to participate, to learn about this program and announce the funding availability that they would be able to access. During this meeting, we answered questions and asked these organizations to provide us with a letter of intent to the city of Yuba City. We gave them 2 weeks to respond. The questions were not too difficult. It was really a, who, what, when, where. So we asked about their organization, who they served, what they were proposing to do with the money, a description of the activity, a proposed budget, and a proposed schedule. These were due 2 weeks later. On that due date, the city had received 27 interested applications. 19 were submitted from internal/city departments, while another 8 were submitted from nonprofit or outside organizations not in the city. On April 1st, we then met with the ad hoc committee, which we reviewed these proposals with and deemed that 16 were at least eligible, quote unquote, to receive these funds, meaning that they passed threshold and were an eligible activity. Next slide, please. So the slide in front of you is what the ad hoc committee determined to be the best use of these funds. As you can see there, the city of Yuba City has a total of $824,716 at its disposal. You may have seen some of these monies come through the county and other cities locally. I would just like to remind everybody that this money came in two different tranches or allocations, we'll call them, CV1 and CV3. So the numbers that you're seeing in front of you tonight represent both of those allocations. So this is the total pot of money that came from the CARES Act. I'll quickly run through each of these programs. Two of the members on the ad hoc committee I know are on the city council, so they're quite familiar with these projects, but just in case anybody else hasn't seen or heard these. So the first one you see there is the Parks Department for a senior center building repairs for a new HVAC unit for the ventilation there for the prevention of COVID-19. We have a mobile recreation program ran by the city of Yuba City. The idea would be to have equipment, accessible recreation items for low-income individuals to use during social distancing. Schools aren't in place, camps aren't happening, so we're trying to give people another option to enjoy recreation and outdoors. Mortgage assistance program. This is to help low-income homeowners who are behind and in arrears on their mortgage payments due to coronavirus. So we would need to show some sort of financial hardship from these families, these households, and the idea there would be to catch them up for a period not to exceed 100 days at this point with mortgage assistance. Just to point out, in case the public is interested, there is the option to also include rental assistance. At this time, the state of California has released $2 billion for an emergency rental assistance program known as ERAP, which is coming out right now. And so we've been hearing from HUD that we should probably focus this more on homeowners while the rental program takes shape and those funds get put out. The next two you'll see there for the fire department, we have a PPE facility upgrade as well as purchasing additional PPEs to protect firefighters when they're responding to pandemics. And then the last four there you'll see are from outside organizations. So we have REST, which is proposing to use monies for the emergency winter shelter program. FREED, which is a dining at home program, a meal voucher program, and the idea is to assist those that are homebound, seniors, those that are sheltering in place so that we can get them a nutrition meal. Playseum, this is excuse me, this is for their scholarship program and camp programs that they run out at the parks, again, for families that would not be able to afford that. And then lastly, Adventist Health, which is proposing a food security program as well. So the total there is $783,000. The city of Yuba City is proposing to take 5% for administration. I would like to point out that that's very small for these funds. HUD does allow for administration to go all the way up to 20%. And so city staff felt if they took just a small portion to cover their time, the rest of it could get out into the community where it is needed. Next slide, please. So what we are asking council to do tonight and what we are recommending is we need to what's known as substantially amend your 2021 action plan. Every year you submit an annual plan to HUD that tells them what you are going to be doing with CDBG money and how you're going to be spending it. Because these funds were not identified previously when you submitted your action plan, we now need to amend that document to include this $800,000 from the CARES Act. So this will go as a substantial amendment, and we are also amending your citizen participation plan, which HUD allows you to modify due to the coronavirus. It typically allows for a 30-day comment period. Due to the coronavirus, they've shortened that to 5 days. So we are amending your citizen participation plan to include that as well. Next slide, please. So again, our recommendation tonight would be to open the public hearing, receive any public comments, close public hearing, and then authorize staff to move forward with submitting the required documentations to HUD for the CDBG CV funding. Once it goes to them in a period of probably 30 days, it sounds like, we would receive a funding agreement, and then we would actually be able to execute these agreements within departments and outside organizations to utilize this money. And the alternative would be to not approve this substantial amendment and provide us with a different recommended projects for funding and further direction on how you would like us to allocate these CDBG CV monies. Next slide, please. And that will do it for my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have at this time. Thank you very much.
Before we get started with the questions, I just want to acknowledge the work of our Development Services Department, Ben and Jaspreet and George Barlow, for their help with this project, monitoring the money and the strings that are attached with getting the money. It's not often that we get to return some tax dollars back to the community. I have a quick question of the city attorney. I notice on my agenda there isn't a place here for the public hearing. Is this required?
That's a very good question. Let me check into that, because
Okay.
you're right.
In the meantime, I think I would like to turn it over first to Councilwoman Espindola. She served with me on the ad hoc committee for this CARES Act funding, and it was good that the outreach, we got a lot of really good projects. And so anyway, I'd like you to go ahead and kick it off, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate, I like to echo exactly what you just said about our team working together on this particular identifying potential projects that would utilize these monies. And I also, want to acknowledge Paul and Lori, thank you, who have worked with our team and done a really good job. What is impressive this cycle of what we've asked from the previous last year, or was it last year or the year before? I can't recall now with all the work that we've been doing, that to really reach out to projects within our city to identify how we can increase the service level for low, moderate community. And so it was very impressive. And I think that Ben worked internally with our team to reach out and identify some of those projects. It was difficult to decide. It was not an easy choice, but one of the things that the mayor and I immediately agreed on was the mortgage assistance program. We felt very strong about assisting community members who are struggling to paying their mortgage. I have been doing multiple years of work in homeless issues, and one of the things that I believe, and I think the mayor concurs with this, is homeless prevention programs are much greater effective, and this aspect of the mortgage assistance program, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep people in their homes and not end up potentially being in deeper issues within the system and the community. We already have a challenge big enough with our homeless community at times, as we all have experienced personally or from others. And so this project is, I think the process has gone really well this year, and not just because we were involved in it, but I think that our team has, and Ben, thank you for really listening and making those accommodations and changes to the things that we've been looking for and asking. So you and your team have done a great job on that, so I just want to commend you on that. So thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your patience. I've conferred with staff. This has been noticed as a public hearing in the newspaper and in all the notices that have gone out.
Okay.
My recommendation is to open a public hearing on this item this evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't have anything to add, Mayor.
Okay. All right. Before we open up a public hearing, I just again, want to acknowledge the fact that there was a lot of outreach here, which, at least in my time with the city, both on the council and perhaps even as a city employee, I don't know that I ever witnessed that. I mean, this is an effort to really get out and solicit applications. One of the things that you might wonder about is, well, if that's the case, how come the city is participating in this and is eligible for CDBG money, especially under the CARES Act? And we look at ourselves as serving at least 68,000 people. So when we do something that funds something within the city, it's benefiting a lot of people, our entire citizenship. The mobile outreach to the recreation programs in the parks, that's taking programs that folks might not be able to access, at one of the other facilities into their neighborhood. I think this is important. The items for the fire department, sort of near and dear to my heart, but those first responders, we need to make sure that as they're out doing the business that they do with individuals, that they don't put themselves in harm's way by being subjected to any kind of foreign body or bloodborne pathogen or anything like that. It's tough because there's a bunch of good applications. So we really did try to prioritize and figure out where we felt that we could get the biggest bang for the buck. Of course, if we had unlimited funding, we'd be fully funding all of these eligible applications. But at the same time, that's just not possible. We are looking to continue with this momentum as other CDBG programs come up, and I know we'll be talking about those in the future. This is the first round, and this is CARES Act money. I also would like to say to the Adams-Ashby group, thank you. You were very patient with a lot of questions and figuring out what was eligible and what wasn't eligible. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. The public hearing on the Community Development Block Grant CARES Act funding is now open. If there are any members of the public who would like to address the council on this issue, please provide your statement via public comment. State your name and address for the record. Do we have any comments from the public on this item? And is there anybody here that would like to speak on it? Yes, sir, Mr. Burns.
So, Thomas Burns, 1885 Greengate Street, Yuba City. I was, checking out some stuff up in Shasta County, and I heard that some of these money that are coming, in this CARES Act, that it was money that had to be spent and then is reimbursed. Is that how it's going, or is it money that is sent and then allocated out? So, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Mr. Moody?
So Paul, please correct me, but if it comes through like the standard HUD CDBG, they allocate the money and then we make a draw once it's accounted for. So we pay and then then we get reimbursed.
So
Yeah, that's correct. So once a funding agreement is completed, the money will show up in your IDIS account, which shows a grant balance. CDBG, though, is always based on a reimbursement basis. So once you've expended it, you will then draw down what's known as a voucher for a reimbursement request.
So we have to spend the money, then get reimbursed. And we have plenty of money to spend, I take it.
I don't know that we have plenty of money, but we have
Just
sufficient funds to cover what we have proposed, yes. Anybody else? How about online?
No public comment.
Okay. Hearing no further comment. Oh, yes. Oh, sorry.
Sammy Mendoza, 547 North Harding Road, Yuba City. Just for the money, I guess a question that I was told to ask is the allocation of the money. Is it determined by the city, like how the money is going to be spent, where it's going to be spent, or is it already preconceived as to where it's going to go and how it's spent?
Probably best handled on the percentages for you.
Yeah, so I guess just to highlight, this is a tough funding source. I mean, to be clear, it has to meet federal requirements, plus it has to be directly tied to COVID to prevent and be associated with COVID-related distress. And so it's a really tough pot of money. And so with that, the ad hoc committee did a really great job, because we took really those 27 applicants, $2+ million, and what was not eligible, what wasn't from HUD, and then what was available, and then try to work to fund everybody in there with that pot of money to what we had available. And so, yes, it's through this public process right now that you could voice your opinion, and it can be modified, but it is decided by the city. Tonight is what's happening as to where it's being allocated. And this recommendation in front of you is based on a lot of work to qualify these funds and these programs that meet all of those criteria.
So in essence, it's just going to be helping our community anyways, and but it has to meet the federal regulations as to where it goes.
Correct.
Okay.
Hi, Don Wahlberg again. I have a question. Does receipt of these funds take away any of your independence or power or authority and give it over to federal or state government?
Not that I'm aware of. These were issued through the CARES Act, the Federal CARES Act that distributed across the country, and it came through a formula process based on our population and our entitlement, our existing entitlement restrictions.
Okay, and so the guidelines that you have to follow, like they're HUD guidelines? Or?
There's federal guidelines regarding prevailing wage rates, regarding bidding procedures, regarding just the auditing and reporting and the accounting of the funds, and how that directly ties to the certain income levels and the use.
Okay.
And so it's trying to find a program, trying to find a need that balances all of that. It becomes tricky for the community.
Yes. Now, does that apply just to these the plans related to the use of these funds, or does that put you in a position where your whole city plan has to comply with their guidelines, where you have to now start doing a demographic study and submit an onerous report every year, that kind of thing, or?
There's different pots of money. These federal monies do not require any sort of expansion of this program.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
I would add that, the costs that are borne by the city, that's part of that administration fee, that 5% that Mr. Moody chatted about, that helps us administer the program. Mr. Burns.
Now, I'm curious, I hear a lot of guys saying that we had to put in extra work and, and this has been real hard and tough and stuff like that. So are we working weekends or nights, extra time, overtime, or is that volunteer work, or what's going on?
I think the difficulty is just sorting through very valid applications with a finite amount of money. I think that's what you hear us talking about with hard work. For the councilwoman and myself, in theory, we're not getting paid for that, and I don't mind that. And I know she doesn't mind it either.
Oh, okay.
But the majority of this work does occur on staff time during the middle of the day.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Through the mayor, I just would like to add, the questions that you're bringing forward are really good questions. So I really appreciate the insight, the clarity, and some additional views about things that, as a city, that we need to communicate. So you're doing a really good job of asking those really hard questions. So thank you.
All right. I think I was ready to close the public hearing. I just want to make sure, going once, going twice, anything online? Okay. Closing the public hearing and bring it back to the council for action.
Through the mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to authorize staff to submit requirement documents to HUD for CDBG, funding.
Yeah. Tongue twister.
Item B and C.
Item B.
Approve, in addition to that, approve substantial amendment to 2020-2021 action plan reflecting $824,716 in CDBG-CV funding, and also approve CPP amendment.
Second.
And I have a motion by Councilperson Kirchner, a second by Councilperson Espandola. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes unanimously. Mr. Ashby, thank you for being online. And again, Mr. Barlow, Jaspreet, and Ben, thank you for your work, and also Councilwoman Espandola.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members.